Please come in. You're right on time. The door only opens when the clock strikes midnight. Georgia and Hannah are preparing to broadcast from the belfry. Just like this old bell tower, they have many stories to tell. Some old and some new. Follow me up these stairs, but mind your step. Ah, they're waiting for you.
Episode.
Episode.
Next episode.
Next episode. This is what I was like if I were a demon. Zoom just asked me if I was playing music.
Are you playing music? That's copyrighted. No, I'm sorry. That's just the dulcet tones of me, one Georgia Ray Abrams.
Is that your mating call? What's happening?
Excuse me, I am Zoom and that's trademark. You can't at me.
I'm gonna just try this at my too.
Just like deeper. Oh my god.
I did like 5 loads of laundry already today.
Yeah, you mentioned you did like a shit ton.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy.
Well,
All I did was do notes, sleep.
I have been putting off like my frilly shirts that I have to wash separately. And so like my shirt that I wore to the concert the other weekend I still hadn't washed, and like my merino wool turtleneck that I have to wash separately, like that kind of stuff. And comforters, we had comforters to wash, and you know.
Genuinely, I'm gonna be real with you. I have not washed my wool sweater that I wore in Scotland. It still has the smell of Scotland on it.
Well, that's because you want to smell Scotland.
Well, yeah.
Literally, I sent you that TikTok that Shannon sent to me first. We just have to all apply.
Yeah. I did see the first comment on it though,
Mm-hmm.
was like kind of sad. It was like, how about you give 50K to the young residents who are already living there to stay? It's like,
I mean,
oh,
yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
That's true. For sure.
Like if it's become more of like a touristy thing, then it's like, oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's fair and depressing, but also all we want to do is move to Scotland and have a B&B.
Seriously. And by we, I mean, I feel like the idea originated with Lily and we're all just running with it.
Yeah, like...
Although I feel like it was already in our hearts. You know what I'm saying?
My mom and I have talked about that, well, my abilities to do anything long-term successfully with my mom, not great. But my mom and I have talked about for a long time, like having a tea room or something, you know, like a little B&B, a tea room, something like that. And it's kind of evolved. Maybe there's like a little artisan guild, you know, with like pottery and wool fiber arts and like...
That's so cute.
Like, because my dad, you know, brews all of his own beer and makes all of his own wine.
Yeah, that's like the third place that we need.
Mm-hmm.
It really is. A little cafe.
Mm-hmm. Oh, who has a history of being a really good barista? Oh, it was me. I do. I know a lot about coffee.
Okay, are we ready for learning?
Where are we going today?
Funnily enough, this is what I wrote for my beginning.
Uh-huh.
I'm going to take you on another mini world tour without ever leaving the comfort of our homes. Ooh.
Transportation in progress.
Now, as much as I love to travel and experience things that are other than what I'm comfortable with, Georgia and I just returned from a nice long trip to New Orleans, and I'm personally, which I think I can say the same for you, I'm all traveled out right now. I'm like ready to be at home.
Yeah, me too, and I have to go to England in less than 3 weeks.
Yeah, but then after that, you can just hide in your house all summer. Except for when I kidnap you and take you kayaking.
And also, I'm supposed to go to Missouri at some point with the other district organizers.
Wow.
And then I think I want to try to do a Chicago weekend. And we have to go to the Renaissance Festival again,
Oh God, yeah.
which we got to talk about themes, what kind of costume are we doing?
Right.
And then it's gonna be time to get ready to go to Williamsburg.
I know. So many things to save money for.
Yeah, and also I have to go back to England again after I get back from England this next time, which will
Yeah.
be my third time in 6 months.
So my body is still not done processing the drinking, for sure, because my blood pressure has been all over the place. I actually wrote my blood pressure has been dummy thick.
But yeah, for real. I still have like some skin issues right here from my rosacea, but
My skin is finally in the process of actually healing because it was all like that red, like crocodile
Mhm.
skin. That's like beforehand, it
That's
wasn't.
rosacea, homie.
Yeah, before we even went, it was my skin was not all that good. It was like all bumpy and dry, and I was like trying to moisturize desperately, and I was like getting crazy zits. And it's like, oh
Hmm.
my God, can I just
We did our
die?
face masks.
Did our face masks. I came home. I have been exfoliating one extra time per week, and
Mm.
now my skin is like doing a lot better.
Honestly, I think this morning was the first time that I did like my full on like skincare, my 17-step skincare routine since before the trip.
Yeah.
And my skin already feels so much different just from like being nice to it.
My skincare routine for the longest time would give me clear skin until like basically taking this like working for our current company,
Hmm.
probably because of stress, but it would literally just be cleanser and moisturizer. And that was it.
Yeah.
And it'd be once a day in the morning. Or I like in the summer, I would usually just do water
Hmm.
and sunscreen. And that's it.
Yeah.
No moisturizer. The sunscreen was the moisturizer because my face was already like making so much oil. Anyway, now,
Yeah, but also like the age at which you started this job is also a common age for like your skin to change anyway.
that's
So
true. Good point.
it probably, yeah, doesn't help like stress, but
Yeah. I know you're supposed to like start a heavier skincare routine like around the time when I started this job
yeah.
because like that's after your frontal cortex is like, all right, I'm done.
Yeah. And you also went from working out in the field to working in
Mhm.
dry ass
Yeah. Not exercising literally every day, all day.
curation spaces.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
We got off on a crazy tangent. So, okay.
if
So
anyone wants to know my skincare routine, I'll make a TikTok about I absolutely will not. I'm just
no.
kidding. I want to be one of those girlies.
The reason I'm taking us on this mini world tour is to talk about a few different concepts of the demon as we know it,
Uh-huh.
and describing cultural backgrounds to these concepts as I can, because not all of them consider things to be actually demonic. Uh, People listening may or may not have been, that's very cute. People listening may or may not have been familiar with the demons discussed in the previous episode. Um, I know I for sure wasn't. Before I wrote that in my notes because before I even said anything last episode, I was like, I don't know anything about anything.
Hell yeah.
I'm just gonna. Uh, I think the situation may be similar here. I know at least a couple of our listeners have gone out and done some learning for themselves and will probably recognize some of these names and definitely some of these concepts. But maybe not, every single one of them, maybe one.
Uh-huh.
So the first place I'm going to take us is Japan.
Whee!
Shocker. I've talked about Japanese myths, legends, and creatures a few times now. I am pretty fascinated with Japanese mythology and
Hey man,
folklore.
Inuyasha's all about demons. Lay it on me. Let's go.
Yes, I know a lot less about the different Japanese theologies because I know less a lot about Japanese theologies because like Shintoism, Buddhism sort of became the dominant religions in Japan. However, what exists there now is kind of a big combination of all of the original like hunter-gatherer religions that once existed before Japan was colonized, which I'm going to talk about
Mm-hmm.
pretty early on here. So I would like to dive a little more into the concept of the yokai, which I think the first time I mentioned it was uh maybe the vampire episode, but it could have been werewolves.
Could
I don't
not tell
remember.
you.
I don't remember, but I know I definitely mentioned it in the werewolf episode because I talked about okami,
Mm-hmm.
which is a yokai. The word yokai encompasses a class of supernatural creatures, entities, or phenomena within Japanese folklore. The word is actually a Middle Chinese compound that literally means strange, supernatural, and extraordinary.
Mm-hmm.
It is a broad and somewhat vague term, at least in our understanding. The word doesn't have an exact equivalent for us English speakers because our history of understanding and dealing with the supernatural is different than that of Japan. So they have this one all like catch-all term, and we just have supernatural, but we also have like ghost, demon, spirit, blah blah blah.
Mm-hmm.
We have like a ton of things. Some other catch-all terms that they've used, though not entirely similar in definition, include bakemono, obake, mononoke, kali, and oni.
Mm-hmm.
Just like in many other parts of the world, Japan became what it is now because of colonization.
Yay.
For thousands of years, the land was populated by predominantly hunter-gatherers until people from the continent, the Asian continent, sailed on over and introduced rice cultivation and metallurgy. And already then, in I believe this was 1,000 to 800 BC, the mythologies were combining
Mm-hmm.
because, as we know, like continental Asia was like Chinese culture.
Yeah. I wrote a paper about the Yamato people.
Ooh, there was a there was a, there was a character in Naruto named
Yamato?
named Yamato,
Oh.
but they called him Yamato.
Yep, that's probably how you pronounce it.
Yeah, because I
Well,
watched the English sub and they would always say Yamato.
technically, I wrote a paper about Japanese burial mounds, but that involved a deep dive into like the settlement of, the peopling of Japan and all
Yeah.
that. So,
Oh my gosh, it's insane. So where did I leave off? Oh yeah, already then between 1000 BC, 800 BC, there were combining mythologies between like what was Chinese myth and these hunter gatherers.
mm-hmm.
In the following years, in the following couple thousand years, there were new coups, theocracies, very bloody civil wars, natural disasters, and so many institutional power struggles. There was also hella art that went through some fun transitions. That's when they kind of really perfected 2D art. I also have to mention Toriyama Sekien, who illustrated and wrote the most popular yokai encyclopedias of the Edo period, which was when the yokai were sort of became their most popular and associated with what they are known as now, these like spirits that just exist and are tricksters or benevolent or malevolent or what have you. They
Mm-hmm.
just exist in not the material world, but they're able to like change things in the material world. Anyway, so after that little aside, I just wanted to talk about art. Yokai include monsters, shapeshifters, tricksters, ghosts, and of course, demons. Although The word does not have an exact equivalent in the Western world, like I've mentioned like 3 or 4 times now. So
Mm-hmm.
we may not need to include demons. Historically, what we know to be demons would probably not fit in this category.
Mm-hmm.
We know demons to do these like nefarious evil things. Yokai are usually just used to explain something that's unexplainable,
Yeah.
although they can get up to some kind of evil shit like killing people or tricking people into killing themselves. That's pretty bad, I think.
NBD.
Death and such. That's pretty
Yeah.
evil. But more often than not, there was this common thread of them being supernatural things that just explained the unexplainable
Yeah.
and like mental illness, as we've talked about. In
Mm-hmm.
folklore, yokai are very often described as animal like creatures. You may be familiar with the tanuki,
Aw.
a raccoon dog that's indigenous to Eastern Asia, including Japan. Shop owners in Japan like to use its likeness as a charm for bringing prosperity to their business, as tanuki are seen as tricksters that trick people out of their money by convincing them to get too drunk and losing sense of time and like all of their
Oh my
sense of
God.
reality.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll spend more money. So business owners and like shop owners will have the little tanuki depiction as like to honor that and be like, hey.
But Mario uses a tanuki suit to trick people into thinking that he is a statue.
He sure does. Because yeah, like the tanuki statues are so popular. I've also talked about the kitsune before. They're also
Mm-hmm.
tricksters. They are shapeshifters, love to trick and bewitch people into doing silly things,
Mm-hmm.
yada yada. But yokai needn't always be animal-like beings. Sometimes they are present in inanimate objects as well, like a book or some sort of tool.
That's
The
fun.
Yeah, I think so too. The Tsukumogami are one of these yokai, and it's said that they in they are tools and objects that you or they come about in tools and objects that you use that you then throw away without properly respecting that discardment,
Mm-hmm.
and then they will haunt that person. they
Oh.
the objects themselves will grow to hate that person and then haunt them. And that made me think of Marie Kondo and how in her
Mm.
whole idea of like making sure you thank the thing that you are throwing away before you throw it
Yeah.
away because it had a part in your life and it deserves
Yeah.
the respect that it once received when it was being used. Otherwise, it's just like a pump and dump, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Um, it also reminds me of like scary movies or whatever that involve like a scary item that you try to get rid of, but it keeps coming back to you. Like a
Mm-hmm.
cursed doll or something.
Yeah,
Or
that could totally be it.
a
Like
Ouija
something that
board.
continually returns to you. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, I think the Ouija board is supposed to be like
Well, yeah.
the the contacting. That it itself does not
Yeah.
have the ability to haunt, but it can
Or
like.
books too. I think I can't remember any specific stories off the top of my head, but I
Oh,
know
Death
there are like
Note.
stories about Death Note. Yeah, like a book that keeps coming back to you.
Hmm.
Um, yeah.
Oh my God. And it has this killing power. Ugh.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Mm-hmm. I used to love Death Note. Oh my God.
Also, Shinigami, also a demon, if
Mm-hmm.
that was not obvious.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't. Shut up. I don't have the Shinigami in my notes, but I did want to mention that.
Yeah.
One thing I did mention earlier was the Oni. That's one of the catch-all terms that has been used in Japanese folklore. And that may actually be the closest thing that we to what we know as demons just based on like looks and its sort of evil, malevolent nature.
Yeah.
They are supposedly big, like huge, sometimes standing taller than trees. They are quite ugly. They're commonly depicted with red or blue skin, horns, and fang-like tusks. They're also terrifying. They possess extreme strength and constitution, and many are accomplished magic users or magicians.
Ooh.
They supposedly bring disaster, spread disease, and punish the damned in hell.
Ooh.
I couldn't find any explanation for how they bring disaster and disease, but I did find some information about punishing the damned in hell. So Oni become what they are, these big ugly creatures, when a super evil person dies and is sent to one of the Buddhist hells, where the ruler of hell essentially makes them transform into the ugly creature and do their bidding. Like giving out punishment and torture to the other bad people that come to hell, but aren't so evil that they, become other Oni. It's also said that some Oni or some people who are so awful evil become Oni when they're still living. Can you think of anybody who might have happened?
So hard not to talk about Inuyasha right now.
Funnily enough, Oni used to be the word to describe hidden or disembodied spirits, but then sort of syncretized. That's not the right word. Whatever. With Hindu Buddhist creatures like the Yaksha, who I have mentioned in the My Eastern Vampire episode, who devour men as punishment.
Yeah.
Yes. There's such a fun tradition to throw roasted soybeans like into your house or out the door, like absolutely just I can't think of a good word, like chucking soybeans into the air and shouting for the Oni to leave, which apparently is done to blind the Oni because you're like aiming for its eyes. You're throwing like hella beans trying to get it in their eyes.
Not to make them count them all.
I think it has something to do with the word being associated with like devil's eye.
Like an evil eye, almost.
Yeah, not entirely sure.
But like totally different, but
yeah.
Yeah.
More modern more modern depictions. I wrote predictions. In like the 2010s, 2020s, Oni are now seen as like more protective creatures from evildoers and have been carved into sculptures on buildings, much like gargoyles or grotesques. Yeah. So now I'm going to transport us.
Transportation in progress.
Across the Pacific Ocean to the South American continent, where the Incan people, or Tawantinsuyu, as they prefer to be called, are thinking about their own demons, or what we, as Western raised bitches, would consider their demons. So once again, we could thank colonization for changing things and making shit a lot more westernized. So I'm going to first talk about that.
Yay!
When the Spanish first encountered the Andes and subsequently the people that live there, they immediately confronted to them what was an alien religious world. They did not have essentially the same beliefs that the people living here did, as we know. And so they tried to equate what they knew to what the people living in the Andes believed in. Yes. They then tried to immediately eradicate that aspect of their culture, and of course many others, but we're just talking about this, from every population through the ministry of their Christian God.
Right.
They were like, nope, you are wrong. This is ugly. This is bad. You cannot do it because my God said so.
Yeah.
Spanish conquest eventually led some some people to the temple of Pachacamac, where they violated the space, the temple, and intruded into the most inner chamber, despite the religious leaders, or priests, as we would call them, telling them, please don't do that. No one can go in there. You need to pray for however many years. You can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
Spaniards were like, hell no, we want to know what's inside. They believed that there was likely an elaborate treasure room because in other temples, in devotion to other deities,
Mm-hmm.
their people would leave gold and jewel offerings and like elaborate art pieces that the Spaniards would then obviously take for themselves. But they
Right.
expected that when they entered this inner chamber. But they found in the center of the room a wooden pole carved with the figure of a man and very meager gold coin offerings
Mm-hmm.
along on the floor. Very disappointed. They expected something bejeweled and, they expected hidden treasure. And then upon exiting the temple, this is what one of the conquistadors wrote. Obviously, this is translated from Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
We went outside to ask why they paid such reverence to something so worthless, and they were astounded at our boldness, and defending the honor of their god, said that he was Pachacamac, who healed their infirmities. As we understood it, in the cavern the devil appeared to those priests and spoke with them, and they entered with the petitions and offerings of those who came in pilgrimage, and indeed, the entire kingdom of Atahualpa went there. Seeing the vileness that was there and the blindness in which all those people lived, we brought together the leaders of the town, and opening their eyes in the presence of all, that cavern into which very few people had ever entered was opened and broken down. By the way, entered and broken down by the Spanish. And when they saw our resolve and grasped what we said of how they had been deceived, they themselves gave a show of being glad. Thus, with great solemnity, we erected a tall cross on that dwelling place which the devil had held so much as his own.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot there.
Mm-hmm.
There is a lot. I can't imagine that the gladness was for real.
No.
I kind of assume that they tried to show that because they just wanted the Spanish to leave and not kill anybody.
Yeah.
Or destroy any more property.
I mean,
they were like, oh yes, of course, this gold is nonsense. We are sinners.
They also might not have even shown that, and it was all just bullshit written by this guy.
For sure. Absolutely.
Like, yeah, they totally weren't mad at us or anything. They were super happy.
They could have just been like, anyway, moving on. And
Thanks
they just
for
assumed that was gladness. It's like, all right.
Yeah.
So that's fun. So just a few years later, another historian reports. So this was after the 2 years it took to, annihilate a culture.
Mm-hmm.
Another historian reports upon visiting the Andean mountains and the people that live there, many temples and other structures had been destroyed and were overgrown. Some groups had been forced to assimilate and become Christian, some going so far as to be baptized and take a Spanish name, like Don Cristobal.
Mm-hmm.
But the Tawantinsuyu merely incorporated their own mythologies and folklore with those of Christianity. And the Augustinian friars still tried to terrorize that out of them. For example, the more common guardian deities that were a part of each individual community rather than the overarching cult figures like the sun god. The more common guardian deities were depicted in stone near their associated communities, which the friars considered to be the devil imitating angels in stone form. I was going to say in the form of stone, which was how it was written, but that's passive voice. In stone form. They were destroyed en masse, regardless of anybody's beliefs or explanations.
Yay.
A little bit of background on Incan religious mythology. Ultimately, when the Incan Empire became what it was, the Tawantinsuyu, it was a conglomeration of multiple individual religions that overlap in deities, rituals, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like how when Japan was colonized by people of the Asian continent, it was just a big old synthesis of stuff
Mm-hmm.
that all seemed to work together. All of the things that I'm going to mention are part of the collective pantheistic religions that have lasted through time. For example, Inti, the sun god, was born of Viracocha. Viracocha is actually one of the gods from the pre-Incan Empire, who was a creator god. They created the cosmos, the land, the people. And Inti, Viracocha's son, Inti does not come from the Quechua language. It's actually a loan word from Pukina. So once again, everything's just mixing up with one another before the European colonizers ever showed up.
Mm-hmm.
Another god, the Amaru, is a double-headed snake that lives underground beneath bodies of water. It is associated with water, irrigation, and wisdom. Since it lives under the earth, it's also associated with the underworld and earthquakes. If you recall or know anything about geography, in Western South America, in the Andes, there lies the Atacama Fault Zone. So there's going to be a lot of earthquakes. These beings, the Amaru, are benevolent, but their powers can be interpreted as protective or destructive depending on what happens. You know, an earthquake wrecks your home. Damn, I must have done something bad. That's punishment. Another deity associated with the Incan underworld is Supay, Supay, who was once considered the god of death and ruler of the underworld and its race of demons.
Cool.
When the Spaniards invaded Tawantinsuyu, the Christian priests in those parties interpreted Supay as demons or the devil or Diablo. In reality, it was more related to ancestral worship, dealing with people after their death, or leading them to the shadow world or / underworld. And according to a collection of miners' stories, like the people that go in the caves and collect minerals and shit, you know, not miners like people younger than yeah. Supay is a controller of souls, not in the way you might think. They accept favors from people and give them good health in return for their worship and devotion.
Cool.
But how did something like this turn into what the Spaniards considered equal to Satan? Well, he has horns, and he was also the one to blame for bringing people to the underworld, or, you know, after death. And it sounds like the Spanish...
psychopomp.
Yeah. It sounds like the Spanish didn't ask enough questions, because they certainly weren't anthropologists. There's also a 20th century Quechua word that has been equated to the Supay, called Sacra, Saqra. I think that's how you say it, which refers to a couple things. One, a bad-tempered, wicked, restless, and malignant devil trickster, and a traditional dance in which its participants dress up in animal garb, some with suspiciously red devil-like features, in honor of certain patron Christian saints on saint days. So this is just my personal guess. I could not find information about this, but I think this word, sacra, came about to describe the concept of Catholic demons, like little devils, in Quechua, and it all just got incorporated into this dance to honor Christian saints.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, you don't need a word for something if it doesn't exist in your culture, but once it exists in your culture,
you're gonna need something. How it got associated with Supay, I don't really know, but that's because like after colonization, Spanish colonization, Supay was depicted as this like red devil horned creature meanie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. So lastly, I know there's only a few places we're going to on this mini world tour. I would like to move back to the Eurasian continent and talk about some Islamic demons.
Transportation in progress. Whee!
Just like the other things I've talked about here, what we may know about the Christian demons, I'm using air quotes because, as we just discussed, it wasn't the demons we just talked about were not from the Bible. They were from people talking about shit after the Bible.
Uh-huh.
I want to cover first the concept of
Sorry,
the
men talking about shit after the
correct. Thank
Bible.
you. Thank you. I want to cover the concept of the Islamic devil, or the closest thing that we can get to Lucifer.
Okay.
Since you didn't really talk about it that much, I'm just kind of, I'm glancing over it because it's huge.
Yeah.
I started writing like quite a bit, and then I had a whole page, and I was like, I don't really care about talking about this much, so let me just cut all that out. So
Yeah. That's a
Iblis,
lot.
or Iblis, was kicked out of heaven and turned into a shaitan after he refused to worship Adam or prostrate before Adam, a la Adam and Eve.
Mm-hmm.
This was a big no-no because Adam is considered the father to all humanity and the first prophet of Islam. He's
Okay.
highly revered and worshipped, and God took major offense to this and was like, "No, this is my creation. How dare you?" Threw him out. Iblis was from then on used as an example of God's punishment and being sent to hell,
Mm-hmm.
but he's actually not considered to be the root of all evil.
Mm-hmm.
Here, he's just a useful explanation that disobedience in itself is evil.
It's bad.
It was like the first evil act. Disobedience was understood.
Mm-hmm.
There are a few different accounts as to exactly how he became the devil, like being an angel sent to clear the earth of any jinn or any evil beings before Adam was sent down to populate the earth, or actually being ancestral to the jinn or these evil things populating the earth, then started worshiping God and was essentially promoted to the lowest level of heaven, and then refusing to prostrate himself before Adam, and then being like, you think you're so. But the whole concept with that latter theory is that angels themselves were forced, like it was required for them to be obedient to God.
Mm-hmm.
But because he wasn't originally an angel, he had free will, he had choice. And so he chose to not. He was like, why would I was only supposed to worship God, not his creations? What are you talking about? Anywho.
What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
A shaitan, which is a commonly used term and also a cognate for Satan, but because it comes from a trilateral root,
Oh, it does? I'm so surprised.
I know, shaitan, Satan.
Christianity and
Islam
and Judaism are
crazy.
kind of the same. What?
And so many of the words are like come from one another. Bizarre.
Crazy.
Chicken or the egg. It's a commonly used for
Jesus
this dude.
was Jewish?
That's crazy.
What?
They say that in the Bible? No way.
Oh my God.
They do. They say that in the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
It's a commonly used term, for this dude after he falls from heaven, Iblis.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's not, so it isn't just one thing like Satan, the one
Uh-huh.
thing, but rather to Satan's hosts, aka demons, aka princes of hell, blah, blah,
Mm-hmm.
blah. Another example of a shaitan, I think that I'm pronouncing that correctly, man, is Mastema, who asked God to keep dead angels on the earth so he could use their help in corrupting humans. The shaitan act under God's command and conduct his malevolent acts as temptations, and are sometimes given specific tasks such as inciting war and violence, incest, adultery, and dishonest business practices.
Ooh.
That last one's really spicy.
Yeah.
Such temptations and whisperings are considered to come from another realm of existence that only these spirits live on. And the more the people listen to and act on the whispers, the more the shaitan will become a part of the material world. The shaitan is also apparently a Fremen term for a powerful embodiment of evil and was an alternate word for the Shai-Hulud or sandworms of Arrakis in Dune.
Sandworms. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Fun.
Also, the Efreet are another kind of demon in Islamic folklore. They're more commonly associated with the underworld and dead spirits, where the shaitan are like the tempters. They're more seen
Mm.
as the demons. And then
Mm-hmm.
the Efreet are like, they're seen as rebellious and wicked, acting against God and taking things to hell.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So these are just some examples of demons across the globe, which I'm sure you noticed some similarities and differences between them. Also, similarities and differences is what you talked about in the previous episode. I know I mentioned some things.
I didn't
Oh,
notice anything. What are you talking
I
about?
know that's crazy. I'm sure we'll talk about this some more in the next episode where we will discuss stuff and things. But I just wanted to explain that the examples I've given here originate from distinct cultures and cosmologies and also are absolutely summaries of what I could find online. Okay. What I could
Which
find and
was really
understand.
hard.
It was hard.
Even with the Christian stuff, it was really hard.
Yes. Um, yes, these examples come from distinct cultures and cosmologies and therefore should not be equated to one another. But as Georgia and I have taken many classes and have participated in many discussions about religion and cultural change, stuff really starts to sound similar because we are only human.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah,
Imagination only goes so far.
yeah. So I'll leave it at that.
Thanks, Carl Jung.
All the great people we can thank are named Carl.
The collective conscious.
Karl Marx,
Yep.
Carl Wieser,
Carl Sagan.
Carl's Jr.,
Carl, the neighbor from Aqua Teen Hunger Force.
Carl the llama in Llamas with Hats.
Oh my god.
Carl, that kills people.
Oh, Jimmy Neutron?
Yeah, that's Carl Wieser.
Oh, yeah, you said that.
It's okay.
God damn it.
Thanks for listening.
On that note.
On that note, bye.
Well, that concludes this week's broadcast. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you wish to stay in touch, reach out to us at broadcastfromthebelfry@gmail.com or stalk us on Instagram at broadcastfromthebelfry. Again, I hope you've enjoyed our little show. Please rate and review. And until next week, stay spooky.